Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Hunter Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Meyer, aka William Zooks. Burning that page with his name on it. Obviously, it's like him finally saying like the final goodbye to who he was before. I mean, granted, he still has to find, was it Frauenheim, the person who sent home dude after him last episode. It's like, cool, that guy knows exactly who I am because they got access to the paperwork and the names that all the Nazis took when they came here to the States. So, gotta find him, gotta deal with him. So, it's interesting, and I guess now it also makes, everyone on the team took it hard about the whole Meyer situation in the season 1 finale, about him being the wolf and everything, but it seemed like Joe took it particularly hard upon a rewatch, and now it makes sense. He was the first one that, Joe was the first one that Meyer recruited. And especially because when the speech that Meyer gave him, it's like, yo, we're in the same boat. It's because Joe, not only is he a veteran, the fact is that it's like, right, we were both you were in internment camp and I was in a concentration camp. And now it's like, yeah, like different circumstances, but also the same situation, And it's like, oh, there you go. You end up getting drafted by the country that would also have locked you up, because he was 5 years old when they locked him up in the camps in San Francisco. But he was like, no, I didn't get drafted. I enlisted. And it's like, that is a complicated conundrum of like fighting for the very country that locked you up. But he enlisted because his father did. His father went off, fought, and died, sadly. But for him, it's like he did it, I guess, for his father, because it's like, that's all you kind of have. You want to follow in your father's footstep. My father was willing to fight for this country that didn't love him, but that was also the thing of like, right, that's the whole commonality between like, right, anyone, the Asians and Jews. It's like we were in the same situation, like, we were both demonized and like hated, so it is. I didn't even think about that last season, like the complicated nature of just Joe's circumstances in that regard. Once again, fighting for a country, and especially because Vietnam left him with a lot of scars too. So I don't even know if it was like, I don't, and I can't be in Joe's mind and his circumstances to fully understand why would you enlist. Is it purely for your father's sake? Your father did it probably because by showcasing how I'm willing to fight for this country because I am a citizen of this country and because I'm willing to fight for it, like that would be better for his family. Maybe Joe was thinking the exact same thing. Meyer convinced him, hey, enlist in my fight. I found a Nazi still alive here. It's like, right, you're not doing it out of the goodness of your heart. You're getting rid of the last person that would know who you are. Yes, this person happens to be a terrible human being. They also happen to be a Nazi. You are also a terrible human being. Taking the name, you are actually even worse because you are perpetrating a human being that you killed and stole his identity, stole his stories. I made all these points last episode, and it makes you even more of a monster than, which isn't like, doesn't dole down the monstrosities that every other Nazi is, but it's like, yeah, it puts a little special asterisk beside you on how crappy you are, with all that you've done. It's like, it doesn't clear you of everything that you've done. You don't get to say goodbye to Wilhelm Zooks because it's still always a part of you. But he got Joe to join his crusade against finding Frauenheim. And it's interesting because Judd Hirsch's character, like we see him again, I'm like, oh, so this is when you stole the files from him that he accused you of last season. And it's like, right, once you got these other files from me, never come to me again. I thought that all happened like the next year after he was working with Ruth. It seems like, no, this already happened beforehand. Because I would have thought coming to him would have been a crucial part of him and Ruth's operation. But maybe with his own resources, he was able to get everything along with Ruth. They already had the stepping blocks to some extent. And obviously the organization grew even more with the Hunters. So that had even more resources and more potential targets to potentially pull from because of that. Maybe that's the justification for it. I don't know. But he went in there just for the sole purpose of telling Judd Hirsch's character, like, hey, I'm looking for this particular guy. You do it for me? I could help you out. It's like, right, you just needed him to call the person to find the file for you and just have Joe take it from that person. So that's where we are with that situation, which is kind of an interesting parallel to, or maybe even using my favorite word, juxtaposition to where Joe is right now. And we get a little inkling to some of what he went through, but it was like, yeah, torture and brainwashing that made him into what he is. It's like, I mean, that's the thing, like, I find, maybe it's making my enemy my strongest ally. Like, once again, what purpose Joe serves to them, besides kind of being like, I guess Hitler's like, right-hand guy or something like that, or maybe it's just like I was interpreting as like, oh, is he going to train their soldiers up because he is a soldier? I guess they like got files on everyone from Myers' team and ended up finding Joe the most fascinating because he is like the most like actually well-trained person amongst them. Everyone else is, good in their own field, but like he's the actual full-blown soldier, and even more so considering he was the first soldier in Myers' War. So I don't know. And since I'm on that topic, we do catch up with Travis. Just miraculously broke out of prison. I mean, we already saw at the end of season 1, he was riling all the prisoners up, and he probably saw that as an opportunity. He probably read things, got enough people under his belt, and was able to use that opportunity to escape. Luckily, I'm surprised that ice cream shop situation didn't turn nasty, especially because the guy that was like, yo, hurry up. Guy behind him was, I'm pretty sure his girlfriend too, were black, so I'm like, I'm surprised it didn't end badly, but it's like, cool, I'm going to sit here and taste all these ice creams, and I was scared for Priya's sake, because I'm like, she was like freaking out, because he started, freaking her out, so, but he sneaks into Argentina, because the colonel set that all up. Poor guys, the moment he pulled out the truck and he's reaching behind him, like, he's about to pop both of you, because it's like, oh, cool, thanks for doing my job, but, I've also got to do my part in, well, for one, your loose ends, but two, got to make this world pure and clean, like marble. Ugh. It's marble. I want to enunciate that. I'm quoting Homelander from The Boys Season 3. Either way, the Colonel has taken a special interest in Travis. And I thought that was such an interesting conversation that they had. She's like, basically, Hitler groomed me at 17. I saw him when I was a child. I didn't know was there that big of an age gap between them, historically speaking? So, historically speaking, because I'd never actually looked into it, there was a 23-year age difference. So, interesting. And like the point I was going into is like the whole thing for her. It's like, right, he was this powerful person. He was like a god to me, an eagle to so many others. But then like the first time they were together, she was like, oh, no, he's not. He's just a weak, balding, pathetic, sweaty man. And it's like, wow. But even despite all that, they see him as an eagle. And for her, it is that situation of she was never seen as who she really is. It's always, he was the shining, terrible, shitty human being star that he is. And she was like, I was never kind of recognized. And it's like, right, he's too lost at this point in time to see the way forward. I do. Because everything has kind of been like, it's like, no, this isn't his show. This is mine. It always kind of has been. But I've always had to like sideline myself because him, to everyone else, he's the gold standard. He's the GOAT. Oh, God, it's shitty just saying that, but that's how she views it. And Travis, she wants to have someone who gets to see her for her. So, which also, speaking of, I was wondering when we got down to the tidy whities, I was like, yo, are we about to see Dong here? And we did, which I'm like, I'm assuming that was prosthetic. I'm going to lean that way, but I'm also like, yeah, but the actor who plays Travis is British, and it's like Europeans, like they're not afraid to like bear it all for like movie roles and stuff like that, men and women, like they are not afraid, so I have no idea. Like I said, I'm leaning more towards being like, I think that was a prosthetic. I didn't look hard enough, but I was like, yo, that's Dong, which I'm like, have we ever seen Dong on Prime Video before? I don't think we have, but I mean, I haven't watched every single thing on Prime, like specific, like the original shows and stuff. So that's interesting. I'm curious how her hubby's going to feel about all this happening behind her back. Going to put Travis in a very interesting spot because it's like, are you going to try and bump off the main man himself to become the main man yourself? Caught up in her machinations might be your undoing. Not less the main man himself decides like, oh, you know what? I'm done with both of your trifling butts. So bam, bam. I think it'd be poetic that it ended up being Joe who ended up doing, or not less. This time, Hitler's the one that catches it. I have no idea, but that's just a crazy circumstance. So I was like, yeah. I mean, we weren't done with Travis, but I wasn't expecting him just to get his way all the way to Argentina. It's like, I guess we're done stateside because there's nothing holding us back technically stateside. Present day. In the past, sure, like Meyer and stuff like that, it's like that's all happening stateside, but everyone's on the international scale now. I mean, that's the whole point of this season, they're going international. But either way, so with all that said and done, there's also picking up with Millie and Jonah. So Jonah tells Millie exactly what's what about what's going on. And it's like, yeah, I found Biff, killed him. He said Hitler's still alive. And it's like, wait, what? No, that can't be. It's like, no one ever saw her body, but also our proof is the Colonel. It's like, what? Yeah, she, I mean, it makes sense because, in retrospect, it's like, yeah, there are people that are part of this that are women, but it's like, yeah, to get that top branch, it's almost like, would they really listen to a woman if she wasn't someone that was so well connected? I never even thought about that. Either time I've seen season 1, it's like, oh, that I just accept it as it was. But I mean, if you're Adolf's like wife, it kind of makes sense why they would. I was just suggesting that maybe that explains why she was able to get into the position that she was in. But regardless, Jonah is trying to convince Millie to kind of join this fight because Millie hasn't told him what she did. But even he's like, why did you reach out to me, especially after your like situation with the pastor went super sideways? Because you believed, regardless of it all, that justice wouldn't come in the form of you trying to do things lawfully, that maybe my side of things is the only option. Because she demonized it so much last season, trying once again keeping him on the straight and narrow, and now it's like, no, maybe that wasn't the right call. Once again, especially considering she kind of walked away 2 years for nothing, didn't get justice, and she has nothing to show for it in so many regards. And he thought she would understand. She did, because I think for her, now that she's actually pulled the trigger herself, and considering it's like, wow, the biggest bad of them all, and especially for Jonah saying the line of, at the very least, all that we done, all that we became, if we do this, then it'll all be worth it in the end. And that's all they kind of had to go on, is like maybe filling that void inside themselves by saying like, hey, we gotta do this, because if we don't, everything was pointless. This can mean the thing that matters. All the sacrifices, all that we've lost, all that we pushed away from us, this could be our opportunity. So Millie comes along, and obviously the rest of the team is not psyched to see Jonah when he starts rolling out to see each and every one of them, which, side note, I do love that Mindy is the only one that was actually happy to see Jonah. To be fair, she had left the squad before everything went down. It seems like Spain is what broke the camel's back with the whole situation with the hunters. That seemed whatever went sideways, and we get an inkling of it when Harriet talks to him about, like, do you even think about the boy? He's like, yeah, I think about that kid every day. Because she's like, did you even think about what you did in Spain? And so I think a situation came up. I mean, and I think without context, I'm only basing this on what we saw in season 1. The bomb situation in the subway happened because he didn't stop that woman when he had a chance. I mean, Harriet eventually put a bullet in her head, but she had a child and he hesitated back then. And because he did that, a bomb went off, Murray died. So maybe that's why he didn't want to be in that situation again. It's like, no, I hesitated before and it was an issue, and maybe it's a situation where a kid was used as a hostage or a shield, and maybe he killed a kid in the process, or it seems like it seems like it's leaning that way, or maybe it was someone on their side that he sacrificed. I don't know. Someone just caught in the middle of it all, maybe. But going around, catching up with everyone. Since I talked about Harriet, we opened the episode actually with her, and her like reading this story to these kids, or to one of the people she's after. And it's sad too, because it's like, oh, so-and-so said that my dad likes you because he's more of a tits man more than an ass man. And she's just like, So, go ahead, just go the fuck to sleep, you know? But yeah, she got close to the guy, and it's so heartbreaking too because one of the girls called Harriet Mama because she was kind of like their nanny. They had recently lost their mom. Harriet came there to kill their dad, ended up killing their dad in front of them, and she actually did feel remorse about it. So I love that she was threatening Jonah. She's like, "Oh, so what should I do? Should I do this and that?" And he's like, "I love it when you try and flirt." We catch up with Lonnie. He's put out a new movie. He's kind of doing the press tour for it, and he's getting interviewed, and he's getting his performance. He's like, "Oh, this is for so and so kid, kids who have a dream." He's like, "Oh, I do it for my fans," and he puts on the tears and stuff like that. I was like, "Oh God, Lonnie." But then like the moment his nose started bleeding, I was like, "You've been hitting that white powder, haven't you?" It's like, oh, it's kind of sad knowing that he. I didn't know that the actor who plays him, Josh Randor, I just read a little bit of a thing. I didn't know he has his own addiction issues, I think, like that. I don't know. I can't remember if it was like just drinking or what. But, because I think I was reading something saying like, oh, for him playing an actor who has that, like with his own demons, like maybe. 'Cause I didn't learn that about Jason Segel until someone told me about that when it came to, like someone had commented that about like, oh yeah, I had no idea he kind of had his own struggles, and I try not to deep dive into actors' lives like that because their business is their business and not mine to kind of know. Unless we're friends, like I feel like I shouldn't have access to all this information about you and your struggles. But if that story is important to someone else who's going through it, maybe it can be an inspiration and inspiring. Like, oh, this person's dealing with the same thing I'm doing, so it's important in those regards. But regardless. He's the first one that hit. He's the only one that hit Jonah in the face. He was the one super not excited to see him. That's why Millie was there to try to be the one that kind of talked to everybody. Roxy was just kind of like, oh boy, which she was off doing forgeries and stuff. And I was like, because I thought she'd be stateside with her daughter, but it seems like she's here with her daughter, and I guess just left your baby daddy in the States or whatever. So not unless he's here with you, still fighting a good fight, just on a different, continent or whatever. So caught up with them and Harriet, and it's like, yeah, the family's got beef. Which Millie's like, I'm not about to sit here and listen to this like dysfunctional fuckery. So yeah, we get this done, and even Jonah's like, yeah, let's do this. One and done. We bag and tag this situation. We're done. We never have to see each other again. So. We also found out there was a Lonnie and Roxy thing, which I thought was surprising, because I always thought it was going to be like a Roxy and Joe, based on like last season. But to be fair, Joe hasn't been around for 2 years, which even Roxy says she tried looking for Joe, and it's like, so I figured as much. They all assumed Joe left on his own accord, that he disappeared of his own accord. So, but they've got this well-laid plan and everything to try and get to the guy who's the ex-Nazi financier, try to get to him to try and find out about Hitler. Well, that doesn't go well because their operation gets interrupted because, well, there's the guy that came to get like that suitcase or whatever from one of the lockers. It's the same... It was like there was a key in the financier guy's jacket that Jonah had, and this guy came and got it. I was like, what was that about? So tussling with some of the guards and stuff, and they get jumped. Specifically Lonnie and Jonah. I don't know how to say like that. Jonah. And the fact is that Harriet was there. I was like, oh, so these have got to be her people. The squad she's a part of, these are some of those people. Because he called Jonah a moron. And because obviously he's like, wait, what are you doing, Harriet? Because none of them know. To be fair, Harriet didn't have much choice. Because she probably never, like, we at the very least know they've known about, that Hitler's still alive for a very long time. At bare minimum, at least 5+ years they've known. So she probably was almost like because we know that she knows. So it's like, okay, so now it's like, crap. Now Jonah's trying to put the team back together, because at the very least them going their separate ways meant she could keep doing what she needed to do, because she did, I think, to some extent feel bad about lying to them, because she did kind of come to like this team and care for them. But now it's like, okay, now you're in the middle of all this. You're gonna, I guess it's gonna come face to face with kind of like the truth about who Harriet is and who she works for, and their plan. Obviously, it's the same thing, but the hunters, I think, are on a smaller scale than the organization that she works for, which is on a more, which was already, I think, on an international scale. I think she was probably just the one handling things stateside, but they probably have people probably scattered across every country, maybe. Who knows? So I think we're going to get some answers finally about Harriet's circumstances. I mean, you'd assume this has, well, the church thing she was a part of that we learned about in season 1, it's like, well, that was her having a new identity, but maybe there is some connection to that, considering, like, right, she did go through the whole Sister Harriet thing. She was kind of dressed as the nun and everything for a while, so maybe that is not just a cover, but it is part of all of, I don't know. We'll have to wait to get answers about all of that, but I can only assume that's what the ending of the episode was about. It's just like, right, it's like, she had to deal with it in some shape or form. This plan was always meant to fail because Harriet's squad was supposed to get in and do stuff beforehand, but, it's like, right, she figured like her team would, the hunters will be so preoccupied with their plan, they won't see the kind of Kansas City shuffle that's happening here, but it's like, yeah, both sides kind of bump heads, so Harriet kind of had to go like, right, OG team versus the hunters. OG team kind of takes precedence because like it's for the greater good. So, like I said, we'll have to wait to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.